Hello everybody, welcome to the Northern Film Review. This week we have got a basic, wonderful, going back to the basics of the Northern Film Review review. Lots of reviewing, not a lot of reviewing. So hopefully that tells you what we're going to do this week. we're gonna be reviewing Trainspotting, the wonderful Danny Boyle film, the British Pulp Fiction, as it is so often said, but I think is quite a wrong description of the film. We'll be going into the sort of the theories of the how it was made, sort of low budget filmmaking, how Scottish people were basically thought to be all drug addicts because of this film. No, I don't know whether that's true, but it is something I saw in an article. But hopefully you'll enjoy this week. And yeah.
The Northern Film Review, with your hosts, Oliver Ellis and Luke Simpson.
Brilliant intro that was. Brilliant intro.
Good intro, wasn't it? I usually write them down of my intros. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna exactly say this. I'm gonna be like, okay, well, this is what I'm saying. This week we're gonna Northern Film Review. Oof. And I didn't do that, and I thought I'd free ball it. I don't know whether
go with the flow, as people would say.
Yeah, I think free balling is a little more I don't know, ambiguous. But yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, how was your week, Luke? How have you been doing?
I've been all right. I mean, I went to the dentist the other day, and I had a tooth pulled out on my birthday, which is just.
Did you?
What? So yeah, I went to the dentist, chipped my tooth on an owl, as you do. Then I go to the dentist, and they go, "Oh yes, that needs pulling out." And then they say, "Oh, how does the 1st of April work?" I'm like, "That's my birthday." I'm like, "Well, there's no other way we can fit you in, so you're gonna get that on your birthday." I was like, "Oh, brilliant!" But apart from that, it's been windy, very windy in Leeds.
Oh god, so windy. Yeah.
It's been just uni work, uni life. What can I say?
Yeah, I think it's been so windy, and I wear this little sort of hipster hat that kind of it doesn't really like touch my ears or whatever. And like last year, it got really really windy, and I was wearing this hat, and it flew off my head. And I was chasing it like screaming, "Oh, my hat, my hat, my hat!" And I'd literally just come out of recording a radio show. And I was just chasing it down the street, and like there was so many people around, and there was a peak sort of time, and I was constantly frightened that was going to happen to me. But yeah, I've had an interesting week. I've had very poor sleep this week, but I had a very good night's sleep last night, which isn't the most interesting thing in the world. But you know, when you sort of like, sleep's so great. And you know, I was trying out equipment for this film that I'm going to be working on, and that was really fun.
Nice.
And I enjoyed that. I like messing with equipment, and you're sort of like, oh wow, this is really cool. But it's kind of like, because I'm working on this BA3 film, and they gave me such a weird assortment of like sound gear, right? Because the sort of the classic set of sound gear you get is sort of a Rode Blimp, which is one of these sort of big sort of microphone covers. You know, a microphone and a boom pole, and then it's a recorder called a Zoom F8N. And then you get like maybe one or two sort of clip mics or lav mics, or you know, the little black mics you see on people's shirts. And
lapel mics, I call them.
Lapel mics, or whatever you can call them, whatever. And I went to the sort of the place where we were testing out the gear, and there was a little pile of stuff, and I opened up the two boxes, and the thing is with radio mics, you get a receiver and then you get a transmitter, and in one of the boxes there was two transmitters, so it basically meant that I couldn't test out two radio mics, which was fun, and then I was given this boom pole, and I was given this sort of mic holder thing, and the sort of the XLR coming out of the mic holder. I couldn't put the XLR into the mic holder because there was a little sort of bolt that was stopping me from putting the and it was such poor design. It's very hard to describe on a podcast, but like, oh my god, I was so infuriated with this. And I said to the producer or whatever, I was like, oh hey, can I get this specific recorder, because it was the recorder I knew how to work, and it would have been cheaper to rent. And then I come to the place, and they've given me this like huge, expensive recorder. I'm like, I have no idea how to use this. I'm like, you could have spent the money like sort of renting out this recorder to get me sort of a cheaper recorder and a better boom pole that doesn't have a bolt in the way of me putting my mic in. Anyway, it's
breathe
beyond annoying. But I think I basically spent like an hour watching a YouTube video on how to use this recorder. So perhaps I have a bit more width and depth of my recording knowledge, but it was still quite annoying. And filmmaking,
Filmmaking, get lots of problems in it, don't you?
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to use my own Blimp for the reduction because they didn't provide me with one. But my Blimp, I got it second hand. And there was a big crack down it, and I fixed the crack by it's a very stupid way of fixing things, but the way you fix like cracks in plastic is you either get like resin and then fill in the crack, or you heat over the crack with like
like a lighter.
Well, no, but like a soldering iron, right?
Yeah.
That's the professional way of doing it. And I couldn't find my soldering iron at home, and I only got it before I was going to go to university. And then I was at university, and I had this crack in my Blimp. I was like, oh, I really want to fix this. So I basically spent like half a day heating up a knife, and then syringing over the crack. It's not the most fantastically done thing in the world, but
I hope you didn't put it in a microwave to heat it up.
No, I had my sort of I had an oven glove, and I was holding the knife with an oven glove, and I was heating it over the stove. And I'm sure this isn't the greatest idea in the world, and I really, really would not recommend you doing this, as it is beyond stupid. Do not do this at home or whatever. This is not advice, but it did fix the crack, and I was relatively happy with the result. And yeah, it's interesting. And because I got it second hand, she also gave it to me with a broken XLR, which basically made it so that it wasn't worth getting it second hand at all. And I was incredibly annoyed that she didn't tell me the XLR was broken. So thank you, Rebecca on eBay, for giving me a broken XLR. Anyway, so moving on from my story of broken road blimps, we're going into the more sort of DIY-ish filmmaking world today, aren't we, Luke? Which is Trainspotting.
I think we mentioned it in the podcast before briefly.
Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned it, saying you like the themes of it, don't you? So it's
Yeah.
like your type of film, isn't it?
It was the podcast where we debated about sort of Scorsese versus Marvel. And I said, well, Trainspotting has a lot of themes that I'm interested in, and I can relate to the characters a bit more.
Well, are you a drug abuser?
I am. And that's why I syringed a plastic crack with a knife I heated up on the stove. And yeah, it is the film that I would relate to a bit more. So if you haven't watched it, did you write a synopsis for it, or?
I found one on the internet.
Okay, do you want to tell the people like a little bit about it?
Yeah, so we follow Mark Renton, who's a heroin addict who just stumbles through sobriety with his unreliable friends, Sick Boy, Big Beast Bud, and Tommy. He has a girlfriend, Dina, is it? Something like that. along the ride. After cleaning up, he moves from Edinburgh to London. But he finds out he can't escape his life. He left behind because Begbie shows up at his front door on the lam. Scheming. So
Scheming.
I think it's Danny Boyle's second film he directed. I think I can't remember the first one he did. I've got it somewhere here.
In your notes.
In my notes somewhere. Yes, it's Shallow Grave, and it was he actually did Shallow Grave with Ewan McGregor as well. So that's why he wanted Ewan McGregor to be in the film in Trainspotting. He always had him in mind from that film.
Interesting. So it is a very highly critically acclaimed film. I don't know whether it won any Oscars, but it is on sort of Rotten Tomatoes and that sort of thing. It won a nominee for Best Adapted Screenplay at the Oscars, so it didn't win any. But it is very critically acclaimed on Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes. So on the Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 91 critic score and a 93 audience score, which is very high.
Wow.
And I got a wonderful sort of critic quote. Critic quote. And it says, "What's interesting viewing the film now is how it manages to be both inarguably of its time, the mid-90s, but also has not dated nearly as badly as most youth culture movies tend to," which is, I thought that was a really good comment. And then Metacritic, 83 critic score and an 8.7 audience score. And I found this sort of I like to find sort of comments that really sort of hate the film and were obviously written by someone who doesn't really care so much about grammar. And this person, I'm guessing it's a he, wrote this very long thing, and they sort of, what I found interesting about their critique was like they said this. They said, I know, I'm so sorry. This is a completely beloved film, and I absolutely hate everything about it. Once again, I have to admit, I only got about 60% of the way through this awful film. Let me recite everything I remember. And then he goes on and he recites everything that he remembers. It's incredibly long, sort of, I don't know. It is such an odd way of doing a sort of like critique. I mean, I think doing a synopsis of a film is fine, like we just did. But that was his main critique, was him just going through the film, just describing it. And he said he got 60%.
You can't critique a film if you don't finish the film.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Very odd. And he goes, I got his sort of final bit of it, and he goes, "Listen, you can make a film that has horrifying imagery if your goal is to warn the audience. George Orwell understood it. He wrote books. He's not a filmmaker. Tarantino understands that. Danny Boyle ? Didn't seem to understand it here. You can do it, but not when you give your film this weird comedic wrapping that Trainspotting has. It acts like a comedy, which to me is insulting and cruel."
But I think that Scottish people make comedy out of anything, though, don't they? They're quite they're a funny bunch. They're very funny. Like, without knowing, they're just in conversation. They're just hilarious. So I think that's why it's kind of funny at points.
Yeah, and I thought, I don't know. It was a weird comment, but I think, I don't know. I think I like to pick these sort of things because it's an interesting sort of talking point. And he said, George Orwell understood that. And again, he wrote books, not. I mean, I'm not that clued up on George Orwell, but I don't think he was a famous film director. But it was directed by Danny Boyle, who is very interesting. And he, like you mentioned earlier, he's directed a lot of films, but he also directed the 2012 Olympics.
Did he?
He did, yeah. He directed the opening ceremony, and that was interesting. interesting fact I know about Danny Boyle.
Yeah, I don't. How do you go around? How do you go around directing an opening ceremony? That's what I don't understand. It's like it was I think it's one of the best opening ceremonies I've seen. That because obviously they got Danny Boyle to do it. But it was just how do you go around doing it, directing it live and everything like that? I think interesting to know about. I think.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And I think I don't know, it was weird, and I just thought, well, you got, and it's a marvelous sort of weirdly interesting opening ceremony if you've seen it. But yeah, so Trainspotting is very sort of visceral and sort of has lots of inherent sort of imagery in it, and like you said, it tackles sort of drug abuse and specifically heroin abuse. So like how the trials and tribulations of like someone who is addicted to heroin goes about sort of dealing with life, and that I think this guy said, oh, it's kind of this comedy rapping, but I think that's what Danny Boyle or whomever sort of wrote it was going about. Like if you write a film about heroin, you got to be like, oh, okay, it is all fun and games. Yeah. Until you find a dead baby in your sort of horrible decrepit flat.
Yeah, and it's like it's what heroin does to you. Yeah, you see what like an exorcist looking, head twisting baby, but that's a bad trip, isn't it? I mean, they get that guy that you said about who wrote that long-winded review on it was like, oh yeah, it's horror, but that's heroin addiction is horror as well. So I think you should know when you go into a film about heroin abuse, you should know about bad trips and stuff like that. That it's not all fun and games, is it? You should, if you know a bit about heroin, then you should be like, yes, I'm going to get myself into this. There is going to be some dark imagery in here, so I'm preparing myself for that.
And I just, I think there's sort of lots of points in the film where it looks like they're having a really good time. But there's sort of statutory rape and sort of death of infants and sort of friends who die, and there's sort of big glassy fights and stuff like that. But it's just sort of in this veil of sort of comedy, because it's sort of that kind of what makes heroin makes you feel. It's sort of this social realist sort of environment that your life is a bit terrible, but in reality, you're just kind of seeing it like, it's just wonderful. Just everything is on heroin.
There's that famous quote in the film. It's shite being Scottish. So
it sure is. I just sort of I think that's another point as well. I think I can't remember whether I mentioned it in the intro. I think I did. My long rambly intro about the fact that like Scottish, that this is sort of a weirdly sort of broadening stereotype, and like making people think that Scottish people are all sort of addicted to heroin, which is, well, I mean, I have a roommate, or technically had, because he's left now, who is Scottish, and he wasn't a heroin addict, at least I don't think so. He studied classical singing, but I think it is that sort of weird sort of stereotype that Trainspotting has put onto people, and I don't know, and it's very much sort of people say it's sort of the British Pulp Fiction, which sort of broadens these sort of like veils of like, oh, it's sort of these people's lives are sort of terrible and they're sort of involved with gangs, there's loads of violence and stuff like that, but it's sort of they've got this veil of sort of like, oh, it's all right, sort of thing. You know what I mean? And I think that's quite interesting. And it's like, for example, you were talking about before the podcast of the toilet scene.
Yeah, it's one of the most iconic scenes in Trainspotting. That and the intro scene, but they're like the two most iconic scenes. And the toilet scene, very visceral, and it's the worst toilet in Scotland, and it's just you go in it and it's just awful, just blocked toilets, wet, damp, leaking everywhere, just poo everywhere, pee everywhere. It's
like
just
a student toilet.
it's like my toilet. No, but yeah, it's very visceral, and I think what I took from it, he needed the toilet desperately, and he'll do anything to go to the toilet. And I think that mirrors like how you do anything for a hit, if you know what I mean. Anything for a hit of heroin or anything like that. It's like he needed to go to the toilet desperately, so he goes to the worst toilet in Scotland and relieves himself because he couldn't go anywhere else. He couldn't wait. He couldn't do anything. He had to go there and then. And then that theme, it mirrors it by him dropping his drugs down the toilet and him fishing in to go and get it because he can't not have heroin. So yeah, and diving headfirst into a poo-filled toilet to go and get his drugs.
Yeah, I think what I love about this scene as well is it sort of inspires pop culture quite a bit. And one of the things I found interesting is it's used a lot in music videos. So if you've ever seen the music video for Doorman by Slow Tie, it's basically a complete recreation of that sort of scene of Slow Tie going in and sort of taking out his cigarette and like sort of like going into the toilet. And I think that's one of the sort of wonderful things about this film is it's sort of really pertinent to sort of pop culture and has really influenced quite a lot about. It's weird to say, but it's like such an influential film in sort of British culture.
Yeah.
And the wider scape of it all.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it feels like it. Especially from the first scene, I think the first scene the first scene of Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels by Guy Ritchie kind of mirrors the kind of style of the intro. Not like the voiceover, but like getting chased by the police, and it's like focusing on the people running away, two guys running away from the police. It's something simple as that might be influenced that Guy Ritchie to do that film.
And I think, it's one of the sort of the wonderful things about Danny Boyle as a director is he has such a weird sort of overarching influence on general culture, which I find so interesting. What was it? 127 Hours was incredibly influential. Slumdog Millionaire, and sort of wonderful stuff like that. And I'm just like
Steve Jobs as well.
Steve Jobs, yeah, which was another interesting film. Obviously Daniel Boyle. Not all of his films have been great. Yesterday,
The Beach.
but he has made some real crackers of films and stuff like that, which is super interesting and sort of pertinent.
Yeah, I was watching an interview with Killian Murphy, who's in two of my favourite Danny Boyle films, 28 Days Later and Sunshine. Yeah. And he says he's just got a real passion for filmmaking. Like, he's one of the most passionate filmmakers he's ever seen. And that's what I like about Danny Boyle. Like, he's passionate. Like, if he's given a small budget, he'll work with that small budget and create a masterpiece like Trainspotting.
So you mentioned something interesting there, sort of the small budget of the film.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. So for what? So the budget of the film was 1.5 million. Yes, that sounds a lot, but that's how much Saw got given. You see films like Alita: Battle Angel with 200 million, and I mean awful films. But given 1.5 million to make a film, it seems a lot, but they have to think realistically, like actors, sets, locations, everything like that. It all builds up, and to make a film this good with that much money, and in the box office, it earned 72 million in the box office, which is back then amazing for that much money spent in it, and to get around that money, they need to be smart about it. Like they need to use the knowledge of filmmaking, of props, and everything like that. And my favourite thing they did is the toilet scene. I'm going back to this toilet scene. because CGI back then was it was a thing, but it was awful. 1996, something like that. So what they did for the toilet scene to make it look good is that basically they cut the toilet in half and put a tube down the side of it, had the camera at a certain angle so it looks like a full toilet, and then just put Ewan McGregor head first in and basically twist his legs to look like he's going around the bend of the toilet. But it's like that, and the poo and stuff in there. That's all chocolate. The whole film, the whole room was full of chocolate, and apparently it smelled delicious. But didn't look like it, does it?
No, and I think that's so interesting. Having sort of, I like finding stuff out about films, and they're like using this random sort of thing that you would never think is that. You know, sort of like paper bags in films. They're quite often sort of made out of plastic because they make too much noise on set. And I remember seeing that as like a TikTok or something like that, and I was like, "Oh, this is so interesting."
Yeah, I saw it. I think I saw the same thing, but I saw it on Facebook, and it was Prop Master, and it's really cool. And basically, with the plastic bag, the plastic paper bag, sounds stupid, but it basically doesn't make it. It just makes it look geometric. It doesn't dip at the bottom or anything like that, because that looks a bit ugly, doesn't it? It just keeps everything nice and neat, and yes, say it for yours, for you, it saves. It's not as noisy, is it? So it doesn't annoy the sound recordist.
Yeah, and I've more or less run into a problem where that's happened, because I'm doing this sort of sound edit for this film for my one of my modules, and like the sound recordist I didn't take into consideration that there'll be like sort of this plastic settee, and this is a whole dialogue is sort of ruined by like her just like and I'm like, oh, please, you could have taken this into account of some sort.
Just don't move, just stay perfectly still.
Yeah, and it is very annoying. But yeah, this film's so great and it's so interesting. And I think I love this film so much because it's got such a like style to it. Yeah. And I think that's so interesting. And there's so many sort of like shots in it. It's like it feels like it's DIY. And I tend to think films that feel DIY are a bit terrible. And you can be like, oh, okay, this is kind of like a student film, or like this film is so low budget, or like, you know, this is like obviously a director's first film or whatever. Yeah. But this film, it really takes that into sort of its own breadth and style. It kind of feels like if like punk music was like a film form, and this is the result of it. Because a lot of sort of because I like to draw distinctions between like film and music quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I tend, because you know film's a new art form, and you see sort of a lot of sort of relations to it in like sort of music, like how it's made. Because with a lot of music for a lot of time, it was sort of like, oh, we've got to get the highest quality, we've got to get the best things for all of it, and then there's sort of like moments in sort of musical history where it's like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to be we're going to like just record it from this like terrible £15 tape recorder, and then they sell like 1 million records or whatever. This is what I feel from this film is like, you know, this was recorded on a £15 tape recorder, but it looks and feels amazing.
I know it sounds stupid, but it's got a proper British style to it, if you know what I mean. Like
definitely.
It feels British when you watch it. You can definitely see resemblance to Guy Ritchie as well, with like how they don't care that they're portraying UK as gritty and crime ridden and stuff like that, because that's kind of the truth about it, and it just has that style of, you look at it, oh, that's definitely a British film because of the colour and style of filmmaking on it.
Yeah, and I think definitely because it's sort of it's very much within the genre of I was going to say British social realism, but I'm just going to say sort of United Kingdom social realism, and how it's sort of like based on that. But if you watch a lot of the films within that type of filmmaking or genre, you tend to see a lot of, I wouldn't say poorly made films, but they're sort of EastEnders, but without the viewers. And like they'll have the same sort of storylines as like EastEnders, but it's seen as sort of like high art because it's a film and it's a bit slower. And I think someone out there will probably disagree with me hard on that, but I think that's quite true. And I think to really sort of make a thing that isn't just EastEnders but without the viewers is very much sort of the way that Danny Boyle has done it in this film, sort of these really interesting sort of cinematic techniques that he's used, and methods that really sort of emphasize some of the bits of it. And I think the dead baby scene and the sort of the when he's coming off of heroin in his room, when he's got like his train wallpaper, is so sort of like, it's so well made, and that's what really sets it apart from like other social realist films, or like and again EastEnders of the sort, because it is made to be cinematic, and I think that's what a lot of the films in the genre that it's doing don't really achieve.
They're just there for the drama.
Yeah, or like someone's going, well, it's all about class. I'm like, well, you can't just like put a bunch of sort of people who are working class in a film and go, well, it's all just about class. You gotta you gotta say a little bit more, and you gotta make it interesting to watch. I can't think of any films on the top of my head that I have seen, but I've seen a lot of them on Mubi. I'm like, well, this is just kind of sad. And I've definitely fallen into that trap sometimes with writing scripts and stuff like that. I'm just kind of writing about sad, poor people, and I'm like, well, okay,
who are in dire situations.
Yeah, and all it is again just EastEnders, but without the viewers. And I've kind of got that sort of thing in my head. I'm like, what else am I actually saying? How can I make it cinematic? And I think Frankie Boyle, Danny Boyle,
Frankie Boyle,
who is Scottish,
and just love the film as well.
And it's just, it does it so well, and I think that's such an interesting way that it's done it.
I've got a question for you as well.
Oh,
yeah. So have you seen the film Requiem for a Dream?
I watched half of it and then I gave up.
Do you think they made that because of Trainspotting, because of the heroin aspect of it, or do you think they just made it just to be just dark and just a psychological thriller?
Well, I think they always do try and follow trends within these sort of like film genres, but I think Requiem for a Dream wasn't really trying to be like social realist in its way that it's made. I think if you watch Requiem for a Dream, it's kind of like
an acid trip. It really is just
and it's really sort of going against any sort of form of realism in the film. And again, we were complaining about the guy who didn't watch the whole thing. I haven't watched the whole thing because I had to go and pack, and then I just gave up. I liked it, and I think I'll probably have to go through and watch it again. But I think sort of films like this do tend to be going off what these sort of films in the past have done in the 90s. I mean, the Requiem for a Dream was released in 2000, I think.
Yeah, by Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah, and they do tend to follow that theme. And also, I think Trainspotting ages better than Requiem for a Dream.
Oh, defo.
Because I think what I found is like sort of mid 90s, early 2000s films really don't age very well. I don't know whether that's sort of my age, and perhaps sort of being brought up just on the very edge of those films, but they really don't age very well. And I think there's sort of the advent of sort of everyone pushing into sort of computerized stuff, And it's sort of really low budget and terrible computerized stuff. And
Because it's the start of it. The real start of visual effects was late 90s, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it just, yes, back then groundbreaking, but then you watch it now, it's just like a bit cringeworthy, really, isn't it? So
yeah, and you can really see it in sort of animation and stuff like that, where it's like there'll be. I think when we did Princess Mononoke, we touched on this, and like just like it's not quite there. The technology's not quite there, but the filmmakers are doing it anyway, and they're like, it's so horrible. And I think after 2010, maybe 2008, the computers have finally caught up to the whatever, and it actually starts to look good now. But and I think that's perhaps one of the good things about Trainspotting is that it didn't sort of decide to go, well, I'm just going to CGI in a train coming out of his mouth or whatever.
But they did CGI a baby.
Did they? Was it a CGI baby?
Well, I don't think a baby can twist his neck 180 degrees.
Well, I think that was. I'm pretty sure that was a. And again, I probably should have. Yeah, it was a puppet, wasn't it?
Well, I'll have a quick check actually.
Because I'm pretty sure I remember seeing the sort of the tracks along the ceiling. When I watched the film, I was like, that baby's on tracks.
Yeah, it's how crass the CGI looks. Apparently, it is CGI.
Is it?
Yeah, apparently. Danny Bot with a head. Dawn is surprising. It's creepy. It looks crass. The CGI looks. If anime could do, yeah, I think it is CGI.
I swear to God, I saw the tracks behind that baby. In that,
the baby. I think it's just a ceiling.
Interesting.
It's just freaky though, isn't it? I mean, the CGI looks great. It looks great though. Like that's what I'm trying to get at. It looks great.
So yes, it is not a baby that is real. It is a CGI baby, as we just found out. But maybe I am amazed by mid-90s CGI then. If I thought that baby was real.
I was gonna say the fact they don't overuse it, which is that's what makes it still classed today. If you know what I mean. Like if they overuse CGI, then obviously it wouldn't be as as good as it is now, because you'd be distracted. But the fact that I think that's pretty much the only thing they use CGI wise is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure after we record this podcast, we'll find something else and be like, oh no, they were all CGI. It's like the Irishman; they were all made to look younger.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's interesting. I think I like the use of color in the film as well. I think there's such a distinct use of color in all of the scenes, especially sort of the heroin house. That was where they all culminate, and I thought that was interesting. And especially in the toilet scene where it goes all blue and sort of wonderful and nice and stuff like that. It's very, very, very good. But yeah, I think it is an amazing film, and I think people should definitely go. But it is one of my sort of favourite films. I don't think it's my favourite film, but I think it's up there in terms of films that I really like.
Yeah, I think my dad mentioned this. I think this is one of my dad's favourite. Is up there with one of my dad's favourite films as well. Because it's just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what my dad's favourite film is.
My dad's favourite film is Gone in 60 Seconds or Blues Brothers.
Okay, I think.
But it's up there with one of his favourites.
Yeah, I think my dad likes the Spinal Tap film.
Yeah,
because this is sort of his vibe.
It goes up to 11.
Yeah, and he's got a Spinal Tap shirt and everything. I've never seen that film, and I want to. I can't find it anywhere.
It's a mockumentary, isn't it? It's like one of the original mockumentaries.
And it's not on Netflix. It's not on Amazon Prime. It is nowhere.
Is it called I Am Spinal Tap or something like that?
I think it is. This is
Spinal Tap. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we should watch that one time. Maybe I'll buy it and then we can watch it. But I do really want to watch that film. And maybe one day I will. Who knows? Anyway, there's another thing to do with Trainspotting. But it's nice that it's one of your dad's favourite films. Which is, I don't know, I feel ironic knowing what your dad does. Anyway,
They don't need to know.
No, it's not like a heroin dealer or anything, but
No.
maybe a legal heroin dealer. Anyway,
However.
it's whatever. Yeah. So it's a great film. I really like this film. And I haven't seen Trainspotting 2, and it's yet another film that I can't find anywhere to watch. And obviously,
Do you want to watch it? Do you want to watch it and possibly ruin the film for you, or do you want to watch it just to see what it's like?
I don't know.
Because it's like you see some sequels just completely ruin the original, and the original was classic and everything like that. Then you go to the second one, 20 years later, and they return, and it's just like, no. Like Dumb and Dumber is quite a good example of that, I think. I mean, it was schlock back in the day, but it was funny, and it was the heyday of both of them. And then the Dumb and Dumber 2, it's just horrific.
Yeah. I think people say Trainspotting 2 is all right. Not the best thing in the world, but I think they say it's all right. And I think it's definitely difficult to make a film like that. That is sort of going on from such a cult film that people like so much. But yeah, I mean, there's loads of films that sort of try and become like Trainspotting, and I'm looking on Amazon Prime now of sort of films that look basically like it. Like a film called Acid House, which I've never seen and probably never will.
No, because it's going to be schlock.
Yeah. But yeah, it is a great film, and I really do like it, and it's one of my sort of favourites. So, sort of final thoughts. It is a fun film. You should definitely go watch it. And I would give it if I were to give it a wonderful out of 10, I think it would be like 8. 8 out of 10.
Yeah, 7.5 for me.
I don't think
rather.
Those aren't our highest scores, but it's still definitely a good film.
It's a brilliant film. But it's not like my favourite, but it's a great film.
It's no Parasite, but it's
no.
It's still a great film.
Yeah.
Or Princess Mononoke.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah.
I don't think Danny Boyle really gets the credit he does because his films don't really gross that much in the box office.
He's sort of Oscar fodder. That sort of thing.
He gets nominated, but he's just there because they need an English film in it or something like that, or they can't think of another one that deserves it, and his films are generally good, but they're not Oscar worthy because they say it's not.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't think it's sort of his films don't really broaden onto sort of the or the main. It's like it's sort of in a weird, like I think similar with Pulp Fiction a little bit, where it's sort of it's not the people who really really like film don't really want to watch it, and the people who aren't really into film that much don't really want to watch it. And it's sort of in this weird sort of transitional period, which I watch it in my sort of transitional period. From
it's
being
in no man's land, really, isn't it?
Yeah, from being really into film to sort of, I think people who are really into film sort of watch, Celine Sciamma, Varda, people like
Tarkovsky.
Yeah, and those sort of people. Whereas sort of Danny Boyle's in this sort of weird area. Yeah. And I think,
his films are like my two favourite films by him, Sunshine and 28 Days Later. Sunshine, criminally underrated, and I'm getting Oliver to watch it because I want to talk about it on the podcast.
Eventually, maybe. But yeah, anyway, so hopefully you enjoyed the podcast arena.
All right. Ned Flanders. Calm down.
Maybe that's what I'm going to start calling it from now on. The Northern Film Podcast Arena.
Podcast Arena.
Make sure to check us out on our Instagram, Northern Film Review, where we post semi-regularly. I'd say once a week. But I do put a weird amount of effort into our Instagram posts. And they're all sort of wonderfully designed by myself. I think last week's Instagram post was fantastic.
Yeah, I had to message him back because it was just like, we put this on Instagram. Yeah, of course we are.
Yeah.
Like, all right then.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
That was the one I put the most effort into, and it looks like the one that I put the least effort into. And it's sort of like,
It's just, what is God or what is life or something like that. I was like,
yeah. It's a picture of Martin Scorsese from what was it, Fishtail or something like that.
yeah.
And it's just like, yeah. Anyway, so fun stuff like that on Instagram and our YouTube channel, Another Film Review again. And make sure to check out us on Leeds Student Radio, or maybe you're listening to us on Leeds Student Radio right now. Whoa.
Whoa.
Then 12 till 1 every Saturday we broadcast, which is fun. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it. I've been Oliver.
I've been Luke.
And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.